Contact your local parish priest. Your level of involvement in the church now positively impacts our faith in the future.
You're listening to the home of all things Catholic in Michiana. 95.7 FM WRDI, Napatee, South Bend, Elkhart. Welcome home to your family of faith.
Live from the Redeemer Radio 95.7 studios in the shadows of the Golden Dome, this is Notre Dame Federal Credit Union's Irish Sports Saturdays.
A win at Stanford is never easy for Notre Dame, but this year it should be the easiest it's ever been, with the Cardinal just 3-8. Maybe not ever. They used to be really bad, but the Cardinal 3-8 this season, matching those bad seasons of Stanford old. But for Notre Dame tonight is about taking care of business, then watching everything unfold around them, hoping for the right dominoes to fall over the next 2 Saturdays, and for the Irish to sneak on into the college football playoff on a year no one thought it was remotely imaginable. Welcome to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union's Irish Sports Saturdays, Notre Dame FCU, where UBank does matter. I'm Angel DiCarlo. Hello to those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube. We hope you and your family had a wonderful Thanksgiving, joined as always by Kevin Downey with Ilya Glasman on the other side of the glass. Notre Dame ranks 6th in the latest college football playoff rankings. They close out the regular season at Stanford tonight, 8 p.m. on Fox. The Irish are 10-1, coming off a 55-0 win over Georgia Tech on Senior Day. Kevin, I'm not sure when Notre Dame was needing last-minute drives to beat Toledo, we ever thought the Irish were going to be able to even sniff the playoff, let alone have a legit shot at it right now.
Well, and after their last game, they were just so dominant against Georgia Tech. The defense, Notre Dame defense, and their pass rush, it was really entertaining. It's like a video game of old where they had just nothing. And I guess to credit the defensive coordinator, he found a blitz pass rush scheme that worked, and like all good play callers, he called it again and again and again. And it was just, I mean, it was comical. It was entertaining. And then the offensive, now they can obviously run the ball. They figured out how to get Kyron enough space to make things happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Georgia Tech's really bad, and we're going to talk about a lot of things for Notre Dame in terms of trying to make the playoff. The back end of the schedule has been really bad compared to what they thought it was going to be. They have, with North Carolina losing to NC State, since Cincinnati, they don't have a single team with a above 500 record.
Again, though, looking in the season, there should have been a lot of good names. They're good programs.
I'm not blaming Notre Dame. It's just the way it worked out. All right, and on tap on this morning's show, we will break down all the potential scenarios for the Irish potentially to make the playoffs. Our featured interview is with Irish Illustrated's Tim O'Malley, so a lot of good topics we'll discuss with Tim. We'll hear from Brian Kelly on college football's coaching carousel, and if he thinks he will ever coach anywhere other than Notre Dame. And coming off of Thanksgiving, we'll discuss what players and assistant coaches Notre Dame should be most thankful for. And you can weigh in on our poll of the following players. Who would you be most grateful to if he decides to return next season? Kevin Austin, Isaiah Foskey, Jarrett Patterson, or Kyron Williams? Head to Twitter, search @AngeDiCarlo to cast your vote. One other side note, this will be our final Irish Sports Saturdays until the bowl game. Once we know where the Irish are settling in for either a playoff game or a New Year's Six game, we will announce in commercials here on Redeemer Radio and on social media when our next show will be. Let's start with the Irish chances for the college football playoff and how well this team is playing. Here's Brian Kelly giving the case on why Notre Dame deserves to be in the top 4 at the end of the year.
Consistency and growth as a football team, the playing well at the end of the season, the balance of both offense and defense, shutouts at the end of the season, playing well should mean a lot in terms of the overall record. So winning 11 games. Against Power 5 football teams across the board. Look, at the end of the day, we're going to be right there at the end, and how this is going to play out. We have to beat Stanford. And regardless of what that looks like, it's not going to be played as, that was, a signature win. We think a lot of Stanford. We know their personnel, but it's not going to be perceived that way. So we're going to have to go beat Stanford, play well, and then rely on what happens in front of us. We lost that control when we lost to Cincinnati. But we've done everything else. And we'll have to do that when we play a really good Stanford team. We're going to have to beat them.
That is Notre Dame football coach Brian Kelly talking about, look, he is right. They're not going to get any credit if they win this game. They can only hurt themselves, I think, at this point. It's weird to say that because Notre Dame...
Unless they have a dominating show like they did against Georgia Tech.
That'll
be fresh in the mind.
I don't know if it's going to help them. Maybe it keeps...
They can't sneak away with one and expect to, to sway anything or make their case stronger.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, like, if they go and beat Stanford 17-13, I think that hurts them.
Yeah.
I think if they win 41-3, I think the committee thinks the exact same way of them. But maybe you're right. Maybe if they win 55-0 again, not so much that they think, that's a big win for Notre Dame. Maybe it's more so they think of it in terms of, look at this team playing much better down the stretch.
Yeah, they're good. This good.
Yeah,
dominating weeks in a row.
Yeah, they don't have a let up. Ilya, what are your thoughts as we head into this one?
Well, in terms of Notre Dame, I think you're right. They're going to need a lot of help from all other teams like Alabama, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State. I think they need them all to lose at this point just to reach the playoff. But I think he's right. You know, no one's going to give this Stanford win any credit. Chris Felica on Tuesday said that if Notre Dame does make the playoff, this would be the worst team since Washington back in 2017.
I didn't even realize Washington made the playoff. I forgot about that.
Yes, he said that there would be the worst resume, and then you have Danny Cannell on Twitter.
Wait, Washington? I thought Pac-12 hasn't made it in forever.
They played against Alabama in, 2015, I believe.
Okay, maybe 2015. All right.
Yeah, I think I got my years mixed up.
Okay, I was going to say.
Anyways, then Danny Cannell on Twitter is like, Notre Dame needs to go schedule that 13th data point game.
He wanted him to play BYU this week.
Well,
when he forgot to mention that the SEC, just to play the 13th data point game, they play like Texas Southern, Mercer.
Yeah.
They have to reach the conference championship game to play 12 Power 5 teams or FBS teams.
Yeah, all right. Let's look at the college football playoff rankings. Georgia is 1, Ohio State is 2, Alabama 3. Cincinnati is in right now at number 4. Mm-hmm. Michigan is 5, Notre Dame is 6, Oklahoma State is 7, Baylor is 8. Ole Miss is 9, Oklahoma is 10, but Baylor and Ole Miss both have 2 losses. Ole Miss won over Mississippi State. They're done, so they're at 10-2. Baylor could still win the Big 12 championship again, 2 losses. So really, we're down to 8 teams that have a legitimate shot to make the playoff unless absolute insanity happens. Ohio State and Michigan play today at noon, so that one will even its way out. Alabama plays at Auburn, and then they'll face Georgia next week. So, by default, you're guaranteed 2 teams in front of you losing, so you would think that means Notre Dame makes the top 4. Yeah. However, as Ilya mentioned, you have Oklahoma State. They got Oklahoma today, and then they'll have either Oklahoma or Baylor next week. So
there's all kinds of stuff in front of them.
They got to worry behind them as much as they got to worry about what's happening in front of them. All right, let's go through a couple scenarios on what we think happens if this plays out. If it comes down to 11-1 Notre Dame versus 12-1 Cincinnati, who gets in?
I think that's the hardest thing. You think Notre Dame just because of the improvement? But they lost head-to-head.
It's Notre Dame because...
and strength of schedule. And I agree, there's lots of reasons why, but who knows?
I think it's because one is named Notre Dame and the other is Cincinnati. In the end, will make the difference.
Cincinnati came into Notre Dame Stadium and beat them.
You can't lose at this time of the year. If you lose at this time of the year...
I think you can lose at this time of the year. But here's the thing. Cincinnati would lose to Houston, who is a top 25 team. It's not like they're losing. It's not like they're losing to East Carolina in that championship game, like the team they beat yesterday. So I don't think it's like a definite, but I think because they're a group of 5, look, they don't want a group of 5 team in there. So if they can get them out, although a Georgia-Cincinnati rematch after the way that game was played last year actually sounds kind of fun.
I don't want that. I don't want that.
Well, of course you don't want that.
I don't want it.
I know you don't want it, but it'll be interesting. I agree that Notre Dame will get in. I don't know if Notre Dame deserves to be in over Cincinnati. I don't think they do. I don't think if it came down to yeah, they lost the head-to-head.
I agree
at home.
That.
Yeah, head-to-head at home at Notre Dame. That should matter. Just like we were complaining about the Michigan State thing, right? It should matter, but I think Notre Dame will get in because they're Notre Dame over Cincinnati. All right, 11-1 Notre Dame versus 11-2 Big 12 champion Baylor. I think this is a no-brainer that it's Notre Dame, right?
I would say so.
All right, now it's where it gets interesting. 11-1 Notre Dame versus 12-1 Big 12 champion Oklahoma State.
It would be Oklahoma State.
I think it's Oklahoma State. I think they jump them. In fact, I think Oklahoma State jumps over Notre Dame in the poll Tuesday if they win today.
Regardless?
Well, just on Tuesday, they're going to get the win over Oklahoma.
That's true.
I think
One
that
of
might
those
be,
two.
I think it might just be enough to get to one spot higher than Notre Dame by this Tuesday, and then if they close things out next week. So what do you think? Do you think Oklahoma State gets in over Notre Dame if they win out?
I think it depends how today goes against Oklahoma. It depends how they win. We know the matchup with Oklahoma.
I don't know if it matters how you win a top 10 game. Now, I think it matters maybe what Notre Dame does against Stanford. That could play a factor.
Notre Dame would have to win like 55-0 again. And
right.
Oklahoma State has to like just
barely eke out.
Yeah.
But either way, it's Oklahoma State.
Yeah, well, here's the one that
here's a knock on one of those two.
Here's the one that's interesting. 11-1 Notre Dame versus 12-1 Big 12 champion Oklahoma. Oklahoma's currently ranked 10th, but again, they'd have some marquee wins down the stretch. The knock against them, Ilya, has been they haven't beaten anyone. Well, they'll get 2 top 10 wins.
You're talking
in 2
about
weeks.
Oklahoma?
Oklahoma, sorry. Did I say Oklahoma State?
No,
you said
good.
Oklahoma,
yeah,
but
Oklahoma.
I just wasn't sure.
No, I'm saying I'm wondering if Oklahoma ultimately can jump over
I
Notre Dame.
don't know because they're too far down in the rankings. They're 10th right now, and it's not by accident that they put them in 10th. They just haven't looked consistent enough, and I understand that's 2 top 10 wins right there, but if they were like higher, maybe 8th or 7th, I could see a scenario, but they're 10th right now. That's way too far down.
Right, but if they win today, they could be 5th by Tuesday. Because Notre Dame.
No, the committee. I don't trust the committee. I lost my faith in the committee after the Michigan State thing. I don't trust them to jump them from 10-5 off one win.
How serious
Well,
Michigan's
no.
be?
But remember, you got 2 losses in front of them that are happening. You know what I mean? You're gonna jump ahead of Oklahoma State. They're gonna jump ahead of Michigan. So by default, they go to 7, and then it's just whether or not you decide to give them over Baylor and Ole Miss. I think they would. At that point,
the committee really values Ole Miss a lot.
That's
really
fine, but I'm saying Oklahoma would then have a win over a top 10 team in Oklahoma State. So I think they could go into the Big 12 championship game only 1 spot behind Notre Dame. That's why I think they could then jump them. I think a 1-loss Big 12 champion is a massive problem. Here's the one that's really interesting to me. 11-1 Notre Dame versus 10-2 Alabama, saying Alabama loses to Georgia. What happens?
It doesn't matter if it's by a half a point, if it's by 35. A 2-loss non-conference or Power 5 team that's not a champion, not a conference champion, will not get in.
I don't know. I think Alabama may have a chance to jump them.
Here's the reason. Go ahead, Kevin.
I just do. I think that they value Alabama's whole program and strength of schedule, and I don't know.
Their strength of schedule is just 3 spots ahead of Notre Dame. It's not
right. I agree with that. Here's the thing, though. The committee very rarely penalizes you for losing in a conference championship game. I don't know when they have.
But they lost a game beforehand.
I understand, but
True.
they very rarely penalize
you. And they went to Florida and won by 2. And they went toe-to-toe with
Sounds
Arkansas
logical. I
week.
would think that they lean Alabama.
If you're talking about the Florida-Alabama game, then you might as well start talking about Notre Dame Toledo again.
Yeah, you might as well.
Okay, so then you're getting ridiculous with the arguments. If that game is close against Georgia, I think Alabama's gonna get in. They love Alabama.
Yeah.
It's bottom line. They love them.
They do.
And
if they put Alabama in, there's going to be a guarantee that the playoff field will expand next year. They have
Maybe that's what they want.
December.
Maybe that's what they want.
They want Alabama and more people.
They have the end of December to either expand it next year or to wait till 2025.
They're going to they're forcing the hand to expand it by doing that. All right. And if Wisconsin wins the Big Ten, by the way, Big Ten's toast. They're not. And that's a great thing for Notre Dame because then they'd have a top 10 win because Wisconsin would be in the top 10 if Wisconsin ends up beating Ohio State or Michigan in the Big Ten championship. All right, Kirk Herbstreit keeps mentioning USC should go add Brian Kelly. So Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated decided, what the heck, I'm just going to ask Brian Kelly about this.
It's interesting. Where your name is brought up is where they probably want you to look, so you're not looking where you should be looking. It's just smokescreen. It's just, this time of the year where, throw names out there so people don't look where they're supposed to look.
Other than retiring from your current profession, could you see yourself leaving Notre Dame of your own volition?
No. I mean, look, I think Mike Tomlin had the best line, right? Unless that fairy godmother comes by with that, $250 million check, my wife would want to take a look at it first. I'd have to run it by her.
All right. Well, with James Franklin getting $75 million guaranteed,
not far
and
off.
Mel Turk getting $95, maybe if Brian Kelly was on the open market, he'd get close to, well, maybe not $250, but he probably could get $125 at this point. Obviously he's not going anywhere. Sitting in the press conference room, I'll say this: when he started saying, "Well, it's a smoke screen. Look where you're not supposed to look," I'm like, what is he saying right now? And then Priester, with a great follow-up question, basically gave him a direct opportunity, and he said, "No, I'm not going to go take another coaching job." But the first answer when he said, "Look where," I go, "Does that mean you're interested in LSU and not USA?" I was like, this is a weird way to ask this question.
Kirk Herbstreit just wants Brian Kelly out of Notre Dame because he realizes Brian Kelly is making up recruiting ground with Ohio State, so he feels a little bit threatened by him.
It's wild. Think just 10 years ago. I know this team may be the best example of Brian Kelly's best coaching job, but not just this year. Granted, this year totally. But over the years of that recruiting success, breeding success, and his consistency, like paying James Franklin that much money for Penn State, that's great for him and his family, but come on, man. What about the Michigan State guy? I saw that on SportsCenter today. I'm like, what? Wow, that wasn't he just the guy that bolted from Colorado in the middle of the night? And that we're getting pretty low on the whole.
And then Dave Clawson just got a massive extension at Wake Forest. We don't know how much, but that doesn't – I mean, he deserves it. If you win at Wake Forest –
consistently,
you deserve a big extension.
I don't know.
All right, Notre Dame Federal Credit Union has been serving the Notre Dame community for more than 80 years. That's 80 years of personal service to the ND family, putting people over profits. You're a share of values. Why not share in our benefits? Notre Dame Federal Credit Union. We could talk about this coaching carousel a lot more. However, we're going to talk about that with Tim O'Malley coming up, and I'm very interested in our next segment, so I want to get to it and not run out of time on it. We break down with the matchup with Stanford later on in the show. We'll look at who we are grateful for, and Kyron Williams weighs in on how much playing at Notre Dame has meant to him, and what senior will we be most grateful towards if he returns. Not what senior, what player, Irish player. I should have wrote these not when I was on Tryptophan. Would he be most grateful towards if he returns next season? I don't know what I just said, if that was English. What Notre Dame player would you be most grateful for if he returns next season? You got that? That's what's coming up next on Notre Dame Federal Credit Union's Irish Sports Saturdays on Redeemer Radio.
We know you like football. So do we. We're TireRack.com, and this is our version of a 2-minute drill, except it's only 30 seconds. TireRack.com has an enormous selection of tires. Not sure which ones to buy? Use our Tire Decision Guide to find the right tires for your vehicle and the way you drive. Then get them shipped fast and free on all orders over $50. Shipping is in as little as 1 day. Free. TireRack.com ships to independent, recommended installers. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be. Touchdown!
Indiana Physical Therapy is your choice for physical and occupational therapy. We treat all walks of life, from peewees to professionals, Olympians, and those in between. Schedule at one of our 21 locations without a doctor's order. We accept all insurance plans and have the highest credentialed and most reputable staff. Open 7 to 7 to schedule the same day you call. Indiana Physical Therapy. Call 260-209-2464 or visit indianapt.com, where people go to get better.
Tom's Car Care Center in South Bend is about a lot more than oil changes and car washes. Parishioners at Corpus Christi Church, Tom's Car Care Center is family owned and operated and has served our community since 1988, and we thank them for proudly supporting Redeemer Radio. So stop in for an oil change, grab a sandwich or coffee while you wait, and drive off with a car wash to have your car looking new again. Tom's Car Care Center, the Coffee Spot Cafe, and the Waterworks Car Wash, located at 3201 Sugar Maple Court in South Bend.
Hi, this is Tony Catanzarite of Catanzarite Financial Services. If you'd like help planning your financial future, contact me at tony@catanzaritefinancial.com. This message isn't about my business. It concerns something far more important, uniting our country under God. My father and mother, Joe and Mary Catanzarite, lived their lives based on love of God, family, and country. Consider the question I recently posed to their 8-year-old great-grandson, my grandson, Rocco. If we all do our best to keep the 10 Commandments and treat others the way we'd like to be treated, how many problems would we have? He looked at me and said, not very many. Sometimes it takes a child to open our eyes, simplify things, and help us find the truth. So let's all do our best to keep the 10 Commandments, treat others the way we want to be treated, and let's unite our country under God. For Catanzarite Financial Services, I'm Tony Catanzarite.
Securities and advisory services offered through Harbor Investment Inc., member SIPC.
Thanksgiving is very much about giving thanks and let everyone know what they are grateful for. This week I got a chance to ask Kyron Williams about his Notre Dame experience and what it's meant to him. Let's listen in on that.
I feel like it's meant my life, really. Like, this is where, like, my life has really gotten started for me personally, independently, just being on my own for the first time and meeting new people all around the world and having these like great bonds and connections with my friends is something like I'll never forget. Like, my dad, he always tells me, like, don't forget the relationships and the bonds that you have with the people in that locker room or in that team, because those are things that you last forever. But to me, I feel like it's definitely the connections and the guys that are here that I go to work with each and every day, no matter what it is. And I know they're always gonna have my back and I'm gonna have theirs, but, you know, just having those connections and then seeing what Notre Dame has done for me and like has physically and mentally changed who I am as a person, I'm just forever grateful for that.
Great answer from Kyron Williams, Notre Dame junior running back. Obviously can return for his senior year at Notre Dame. Most expect that he will leave because, you know, you get that wear and tear as a running back.
Yeah, stock's probably as high as it's going to get.
Yeah, and I don't think coming back is going to improve his opportunity in terms of the NFL draft position. The only thing that would bring him back is he wants to come back. And, you know, if he decides he wants to return to Notre Dame for one more season. But, Kevin, just your thoughts on Kyron, what he's meant to the program.
Well, I think, you know, we said for this year especially, he's been their emotional spark, you know, the energy. He's really a great player, but also makes great plays at big time to help the team win.
Yeah.
And he does it all. He can run, obviously, but he can catch the ball and make people miss in space. He can block. I mean, he's really a complete player.
All right, I took Kyle Hamilton out of this poll question for a reason. He's definitely going to the NFL. I mean, barring an absolute miracle. So I figured let's take 4 guys who probably are leaving, but we thought probably were leaving, but could come back. Kevin Austin, Isaiah Foskey, Jarrett Patterson, Kyron Williams. And I asked the poll question, which of the following ND players would you be most grateful to if they decide to return in 2022? Kevin Austin got 8% of the vote. Isaiah Foskey got 26% of the vote. Jarrett Patterson got 2% of the vote. Kyron Williams got 64% of the vote. I did not think it was going to be that lopsided, that Kyron would win that big. Kevin, who would you have voted for?
I'd say Kyron.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Well, I mean, he's just the energy. It'd be pretty awesome to have him one more year.
How about you, Ilya?
Well, I voted on this poll, and I voted for Kevin Austin simply because Looking at next year, I think we could definitely use him in the wide receiver room. He'd be that experienced guy in there, given the young guys that are coming up behind him. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but we could actually afford to lose Kyron Williams. I don't think I've ever said that about a running back at Notre Dame before.
Well,
there is good depth back there. Yeah,
there is good depth, and that was one of the reasons why I would not have voted for Kyron Williams. I think Isaiah Foskey, but there's depth there. But he is so – I can't even imagine if he came back for another year, how much better. Honestly, my vote was for Jared Patterson. He only got 2% of the vote because we complain about how bad the offensive line is, and now you want to take away the most experienced guy, the best player on that offensive line. He comes back. That offensive line now has an opportunity next year to be really good. If Jared Patterson – let's put it this way. If I'm Kyron Williams – I'm definitely not coming back.
If Jared doesn't,
I'm not even considering it.
2-for-1 deal.
Yeah. So we offered the opportunity to some of our Twitter followers to give their answer as to who they were picking. Brandon Keister said it's Williams for me, but I think it's his best interest to go this year. Not only injuries, but next year's RB class is loaded compared to this year. Good answer there. Brett Kovac, Kyron seems like the obvious choice here, but the running backs behind him are very good. The wide receiver room needs Kevin Austin back. So apparently that's Ilya's code name is Brett.
I didn't even read that.
Yeah. Casey wrote, I understand the people saying the RB room is stacked and can handle losing Kyron, but he is possibly the best pass protection RB in the country, and that's on top of being able to run and catch at the highest level. Very rare to be as proficient as he is at all three. And Marcus Dagger wrote, for me it's Foskey. Kyron is and has been a godsend for the offense, but the RB stable is stacked. Foskey's presence and ability to pressure can't be overlooked, and I haven't yet seen his replacement on the depth chart. Very good answer there as well. And Loyal Sun wrote Patterson. For me, it all starts in the trenches. Go Irish. I think those are everyone's
all good
got
points.
Everyone's got a good point. I think you easily could have voted for any one of these four guys and had it. I'm just stunned that Kyron ran away with it. I almost wonder if I would have put Kyle Hamilton in the question.
If he could have beat him too.
I don't know if he would have beat him.
It's been a while since we've seen Kyle Hamilton play.
I just wonder if he would have put a dent into the answer. I thought Hamilton was going to run away with it, so I didn't even put him in that question. It would be interesting. But I'm saying if you had your choice between Hamilton and any of these four, you're taking.
I mean, how many games has Hamilton not played? I can't even remember. I'm getting old.
Four now, I guess.
Four? We're going into 5 games?
But I'm saying you would take Hamilton back next year over Kyron, right? Or no? Would you go Kyron?
I think I may switch to Kyron.
Wow.
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I know.
There's
nobody else, but
I'm definitely taking Hamilton. It's not even like a question.
The Irish defense can play without
is
Hamilton.
Once in a generation lifetime. He's not human. He's a species.
It's true.
Well, and he's gone.
Yeah, and right. It doesn't
unless
matter.
it playoffs or something. But
yeah, right.
More than likely, we saw his last game.
All right. What assistant coach should Notre Dame be most faithful for? After last week's game, Brian Kelly jokingly challenged the media to ask him tough questions. So I'm like, I don't really have a tough one, but I'm going to try to a gotcha question. So here it is for Brian Kelly.
Coach, in light of Thanksgiving, I wanted to ask you which assistant coach you're most thankful for. And since Saturday post game,
I gotta answer that question.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna make it even harder too.
Listen, once I do it, he's coming in for a raise.
Yeah, and to make it harder, since Saturday you said you wanted us to ask you tough questions, you're only allowed to choose one.
Oh my God, Andrew, you're kidding me. I'm most thankful for, let's see, in terms of assistant coaches, I have a number of assistant coaches, you know that. You guys just know the 10 coaches. I would say, of all the coaches on a day-to-day basis, the one that probably makes my life the easiest is I'm gonna go with Brian Polian. He makes my life the easiest.
Why is that?
Because special teams, so hard. It's a hard job, and that's a lot of work. A lot of the little things on a day-to-day basis that go along with that. You got to take that whole group. Old linemen, D linemen, DBs, linebackers. It's a lot of work.
That's Brian Kelly. By the way, you're not in your head like it was a serious answer. I think that was actually it was an inside joke. He knew if he said Polian, none of the other assistants were going to get mad. So
All right.
he had to think about it for a second of how to avoid this. I thought he would say Bayless because how the heck could you get it's a sneaky way around it if you go with the strength and conditioning coach.
Okay.
But who's going to argue with you if you pick Matt Bayless, right? So I think he actually got away with it because he went with kind of an inside joke that he knew his assistants wouldn't get mad at him.
There's good rationale behind it.
No.
And Polian's been a head coach, and if you look on the sideline, whenever it's critical times, there's always Polian in his ear.
Well, that's what I think part of the inside joke is because Polian's always in his ear. So he knew. I think Polian sometimes annoys him in a fun way, right? He's like, hey. He's like, get away from me, Brian. And
I get it.
So, by the way, now, if you would have mentioned recruiting on Polian, then I could have understood it more.
True.
He didn't even bring up recruiting, so I was like, all right, he's just going with special
That's
teams.
a great question, though. I mean, Mike Elston, to me, behind the scenes, if you look at culture and the pattern of success, no matter all these people come and go, he's the consistent one. And the knock against everybody that leaves, if you look at what Mike Elston brings, stability and, real positive coaching to that program is really impressive. Then, Ilya, we got to say Marcus Freeman, what an impact. I mean, the negative plays that he's brought is pretty impressive. So shout out to you for that guy.
Thank you.
I was down on him early, but you can only look at results eventually.
All I said was just give him some time.
I would have went with Elston myself as the most valuable, just because of the loyalty factor and how big he's been in that regard. And certainly you could have went with Freeman, you could have went with Reese, I think, Polian, I think because of recruiting, Bayless. I think Reese would be last in that list just simply because of he's done a good job, but I think he hasn't earned the stripes.
He's on the learning curve.
Yeah. So I think those other guys, but I would have given it to Elston because I just think he's been the loyal soldier all the way around. All right, up next, a chat with Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated about Notre Dame's playoff chances. How good this Notre Dame football team is, and what in the world happened to Stanford and their program, and could Notre Dame have a coaching carousel with all these assistant coaches we just mentioned? Notre Dame Federal Credit Union's Irish Sports Saturdays is back right after this.
Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. The golden rule. When you schedule a financial checkup with Notre Dame Federal Credit Union, our people will be helpful and honest and kind. They will look for ways to save you money, and when your checkup is complete, they will send $150 to Redeemer Radio. For more info, visit NotreDameFCU.com/elevate. You already share our values. Why not share in our benefits? Notre Dame Federal Credit Union.
Support for programming on Redeemer Radio is provided by the DeNicola Center for Ethics and Culture at the University of Notre Dame. The DeNicola Center is committed to sharing the richness of the Catholic moral and intellectual tradition, both on campus and in the wider public square. Learn more about the DeNicola Center and see our schedule of upcoming conferences, lectures, and events at ethicscenter.nd.edu.
There's no question a good mattress is a key to a good night's sleep, but a good mattress can be costly. So what if you could get a high-quality mattress at a discounted price? Elkhart Bedding has been providing just that for more than 100 years. Family and locally owned, Elkhart Bedding is a factory outlet where you can purchase top-notch mattresses directly from them and eliminate all the costs of the middleman. Elkhart Bedding is located at 2124 Sterling Avenue in Elkhart or at elkhartbedding.com.
Are you struggling to make ends meet or know someone who is? Let the St. Vincent de Paul Society help. From food to clothing vouchers, financial assistance, and even beds for children, the St. Vincent de Paul Society has been helping the community since 1904. Programs are available to residents of St. Joseph County at no cost. For more information, call 574-234-6000 or visit our website at svdpsb.org.
This is Leonard DiLorenzo, host of Church Life Today, a production of the McGrath Institute for Church Life at the University of Notre Dame. On Church Life Today, we talk with pastoral leaders and scholars about some of the most important theological, social, and ministerial issues in the church, digging deeper than sound bites or hot takes. If that sounds good to you, join us on Mondays during the noon hour right here on Redeemer Radio, or pick up episodes wherever you get your podcasts or directly at spokestreet.com/churchlife.
Big thank you to TIRAC for all their support of our internship program that we run with students from St. Joseph and Marian High Schools here in Michiana. The students receive practical college-level internship experience, helping out with our broadcasts of high school basketball and football. It wouldn't be possible without the underwriting support from the folks at TIRAC. More tires, great prices. Visit TIRAC.com. Time now for our feature interview. Tim O'Malley of Irish Illustrated is our guest this week. We revisit some of the things we've already discussed in the show, like Notre Dame's playoff chances, and get Tim O'Malley's take on that. We also talk about the coaching carousel, plus how good is this Irish team actually, and what in the world happened to Stanford that leaves them at 3-8 entering tonight's matchup with the Irish. Here's my conversation with Irish Illustrated's Tim O'Malley. All right, Tim, thanks for joining us. First of all, how good is this Notre Dame team? Are they really good and that much better, or do their opponents over the last month stink?
I think both. I think their opponents definitely stink. They may have no opponent over 500 if North Carolina loses to North Carolina State since losing to Cincinnati. And that's just ridiculous when we looked at the schedule and thought, there's a murderer's row there in October. But I do think they're much better. I mean, you can watch the offensive line. If you never watched football until this year, you would know how much better the offensive line is now than it was in September. They were really the crippling unit. I don't think they're as good as BK's best, obviously, over these 12 years. Last year's line was much better, but they're pretty solid, and I think they will have a good day against anyone that's not in the top three, or perhaps there's some stout defenses there in Oklahoma State and Michigan. But other than that, I think this line has really come a long way, and it's helped the offense come a long way.
No question on that. All right, let's go through some scenarios of if these teams end up in the mix with the final spot between Notre Dame and them, who gets in? Okay. 11-1 Notre Dame, 10-2 Alabama.
Well, if 10-2 Alabama loses to Georgia on a last-second field goal with the world watching, and it's one of those classic Alabama-Georgia games like the last two have been in SEC championship games, I think Notre Dame's in some trouble. If Alabama just loses a standard game, I think Notre Dame is going to get in over them. I think it's really hard to – Georgia goes out there and wins 27-14. You got to put a one-loss team like Notre Dame or a one-loss Big 12 champion in. And if Alabama loses to Auburn, then even if they beat Georgia, I've actually had this argument on Twitter with Douglas Farmer from MSNBC that I think Alabama cannot lose to Auburn. That doesn't matter what they do afterwards. But the problem is I don't think they're going to get blown out by Georgia.
Yeah, well, I think even if it's a 2-touchdown game, I think they might get in, because the history of this committee, when have they really ever punished a team for losing in a conference championship game?
No, I'm with you. The second loss might help. It's probably unfortunate that teams like if A&M keeps winning. I mean, A&M's been winning. They're ranked. Arkansas State ranked. Auburn will obviously not be ranked unless they beat Alabama. Then it wouldn't matter. So it's. I still think Notre Dame gets in over 2-loss Bama unless they play a classic in the SEC championship game. And then if you think about it, I mean, if Alabama and Georgia are neck and neck, it's who are obviously two of the four best teams, right?
I still wonder if they would punish a team, especially when Notre Dame's not playing. I think that's the caveat in this. Maybe they would put a Big 12 champion over them, but I don't know if they'd put Notre Dame over them when Notre Dame's not playing and give Notre Dame the advantage for having the bye. All right, yeah. 11-1 Notre Dame versus 11-2 Big 12 champion Baylor.
Notre Dame's in over any Big 12 champion that has 2 losses.
Okay. So does that mean any Big 12 champion that has 1 loss?
No, it does not. I think that Notre Dame fans are not paying enough attention to how well Notre Dame is playing great football over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. So is Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma State adds to that by beating Oklahoma in Bedlam on national TV Saturday night and winning the Big 12 championship game, which could be Baylor or a rematch with Oklahoma, I don't know how Notre Dame plays Stanford and goes idle and stays ahead of them when they're 1 spot ahead right now.
I'm not sure Notre Dame would stay ahead of them Tuesday.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that they might want to. That's true. I mean, especially if Oklahoma State goes out and hammers OU.
They could just flip-flop them Tuesday, and then that's that.
I do feel like Oklahoma State is more highly thought of than Oklahoma this year. It's a rarity. Like when Oklahoma lost even when they were undefeated, they were number 8 or 9 when the first
8.
polls came out. I think there's a little bit more respect for Oklahoma State because of their defense in Oklahoma this year. People know, quote unquote, Oklahoma should have another loss out there, even though that's not really how football works. Notre Dame should have another loss too, if you want to say that from September. I just feel like Oklahoma State rightfully has a lot of respect, and Notre Dame would have a lot of trouble holding them off.
All right, 11-1 Notre Dame versus 12-1 Big 12 champion Oklahoma.
I would have said Notre Dame until I watched the show yesterday, and they mentioned that Oklahoma, even though they're back a couple spots, quote unquote, is basically the same team as Oklahoma State if they win their next 2. That got me a little worried that Oklahoma would also take Notre Dame's spot. Now, what you really need, and this is kind of probable, is that those 2 teams, one of those teams doesn't win their next 2 games because those are 2 hard games, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if you're it sounds dire when you say either team gets in, but those are 2 hard games: Baylor, Oklahoma State, or a rematch with Oklahoma. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible Baylor ends up the Big 12 champ, or Oklahoma State or Oklahoma have 2 losses. It's certainly all those scenarios are in play. All right, 11-1 Notre Dame versus 12-1 Cincinnati.
Notre Dame. I think Cincinnati plummets if they lose. I'm talking plummets. So it's not even close going into the last. Especially now they lose to East Carolina. I think anybody can agree that is.
But they lose to Houston. I mean,
Houston's a good team. If Notre Dame plays,
they're
Houston
in the top 25 right now,
and they are the best team. I mean, it's not Notre Dame's fault when we say these things, but Houston's better this year than USC, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech.
That's what I'm saying.
And maybe not Virginia with Brennan Armstrong, but Notre Dame can play Virginia with Brennan Armstrong.
I think if you put Cincinnati, that one's going to be intriguing because everyone who yelled about Michigan State now will be flip-flopping the other way.
I gotta say though, they had 2 Power 5 wins. One is Notre Dame, one is Indiana. It's not Cincinnati's fault, but so Houston's the second best team. You're gonna get penalized because UCF is not as good as usual too. UCF is normally ranked, and that would be a victory over them. I think Cincinnati plummets. There is a bias against the group of 5. 1 loss Cincinnati doesn't get in over 1 loss Notre Dame, and I'm sure you agree if they lose to East Carolina. That's 2 touchdown favorites.
Yeah. I mean, then it gets ridiculous. All right, if Wisconsin wins the Big Ten shut out of the playoff?
Yeah, Notre Dame looks great if Wisconsin wins the Big Ten. It is the low-key, strangest thing happening that Wisconsin's good at football after what we watched at Chicago. Boy, oh boy, they did not look like they were a viable contender this year, but that means they will have knocked out the winner of the Ohio State-Michigan winner, and that's too much for them right now.
Notre Dame might have a top 10 win after all if Wisconsin wins the Big Ten.
And I think Wisconsin could win in a rematch over Michigan. I would not sign up for them upsetting Ohio State right now.
No. All right. Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated joining us here on Notre Dame Federal Credit Union's Irish Sports Saturdays as we preview Notre Dame and Stanford tonight. We haven't talked about Stanford. Usually, Tim, if I had you on a game against Stanford, we'd be talking about Stanford the entire time. What happened to Stanford that we have no reason to really want to talk about them?
It's amazing, really, the fall from grace they've had. But, it started in 2019 where they all of a sudden weren't running the ball as well. We kept watching that Notre Dame team play and get a little better as November went on after losing to Michigan. And all of a sudden you go to preview Stanford and you're like, well, you got to stop the run. And then you look it up and you realize everybody has stopped Stanford's run for the last 3 years. And, that is their identity, right? Good offensive linemen, great tight ends, a hard-nosed running back, smart quarterback. Tanner McKee's a pretty good quarterback. He's been hurt a little. He is back. But they do not have a running game, and they don't stop the run. They are among the worst teams in the country at stopping the run.
It's so weird.
They get Kyron Williams and Logan Diggs and an offensive line that's playing well. I think Notre Dame runs for over 250 yards in this game.
Yeah, we usually talk about the battle in the trenches. I don't know if there's going to be a battle in the trenches.
I don't think so. I think it's, Tanner McKee, kind of digging a little bit here, he's a pretty good quarterback with a clean pocket. That's how they beat Oregon. They kept Oregon out of the backfield. He had 3 touchdowns, no picks. Oregon was also missing their offensive coordinator for emergency medical situation for the game. That is not an easy game to play when you lose Joe Moorhead, who's a good coordinator. That is part of the reason they won. It's also 2 months ago, and they are just not playing that way now. They lost to Cal, 41-10, and Cal was ravaged by COVID the week before. They're up for the Cal game, right? That is they call it the big game. That is their biggest game for the alumni, at least. And
they got crushed.
you got crushed and by a reeling Cal team. You know, and McKee played. It's a strange situation there. Somebody asked if David Shaw's job was in jeopardy. I don't think so because he's the best Stanford's going to get. But I do think the David Shaw going 10-2 every year is over for the foreseeable future. To think they used to steal players from Notre Dame in recruiting in 2014 through 17 and 18 is crazy now because that just wouldn't happen. I don't think he has a Brian Kelly win 55 games in 5 years in him, but he's a good football coach, so he might. You wouldn't be shocked next year if all of a sudden Stanford's 8-4, right?
The weird part is that I'm more shocked that they're the Stanford of the early 2000s.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, what happened?
They should not be 3-8. They should not be 3-8.
No.
So little that has to go to coaching.
Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated joining us here on Notre Dame Federal Credit Union's Irish Sports Saturdays. If James Franklin is getting $70 million guaranteed, how much would Brian Kelly get on the open market if he was open to going to USC, LSU, or Florida?
More. That's amazing. That's what 11-9 in 2 years gets you these days, huh?
Yes.
I think Pete Sampson tweeted this out from The Athletic. I know I've seen a 10-year contract before around these parts.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought. That was guaranteed, right?
Yes. So that's shocking to me. He does recruit well. I guess they're afraid to lose him to USC.
Wow.
I don't know. Notre Dame fans would have minded that in the end. I guess if you're recruiting players to USC, that's a problem, right? For Notre Dame, always if they're going to restart the recruiting machine, you don't have to have Pete Carroll as your coach to win games. But I am really surprised by that contract extension.
If BK joked he'd only leave if he got $250 million, I mean, if Franklin's getting 70, maybe he actually could get close to that number.
Yeah, LSU will give you a lot, right?
Yeah. All right, let's just say, for whatever crazy reason, BK did leave next week, right? Let's just say it. Who would be the frontliner right now to be the head coach? Is it obviously Luke Fickell?
Yes, no doubt about it. They would go hard after Luke Fickell, I think. I know Notre Dame fans love the coach in waiting idea and falling in love with coordinators they like, but you gotta, as Brian Kelly showed us in his first couple years, and he even admitted, it is a much different job than going out and coaching football when you come to Notre Dame. So before anybody wants to jump in with Marcus Freeman like they would have last year with Clark Lee, I think you are going to Luke Fickell, and I think Matt Campbell's fallen from grace quite a bit for Notre Dame fans recently. Yeah. I was never on the full Matt Campbell train, but now I guess I never had to jump off it, but I'm just avoiding the track altogether. The guy I was thinking back in the day was Matt Rule. He took the strange move of Temple to Baylor, but he parlayed that into Carolina Panthers, so clearly knew what he was doing. I think Fickell's the clear choice to go after.
How many Notre Dame assistants are head coaches next year?
1.
Polian?
Yes.
You don't think Freeman?
I think he's got another year at Notre Dame, and then I think he gets a better job. I don't think he will go to Cincinnati when Fickell takes a bigger job. I think Marcus Freeman can really make a move up the coaching ladder if he has another year. If this defense improves next year, they're in title contention or playoff contention again.
I'm interested in Virginia Tech for Marcus Freeman.
Because that would be there's a recruiting base in that area that helps too. The history of great defense there. I don't know how much. It just was Frank Beamer, right? I mean, we think of Virginia Tech as being a second-tier, nationally strong team for 2 decades, but maybe that was Frank Beamer's magic. It's kind of like Bill Snyder in Kansas State. Like, well, Kansas State was good for 15 years. There's one reason Kansas State was good for 15 years. Virginia Tech would have a much better recruiting base, obviously. So that could probably be attractive. And as we've seen, if Clemson's down, rolling through the ACC isn't that difficult either.
Well, and Florida and LSU and USC got to get their coach from somewhere. So
yeah. Oh yeah. No. Now those are hard to turn. That's hard to turn down. Obviously, I just don't know.
I don't know if it's him, but I mean, then that if they pick off somebody else that you're not thinking of, then all of a sudden that job's like, that's not a bad job in the ACC or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
I kind of feel like Marcus Freeman had not that you can't go back on this, but had the handshake agreement of, look, we know how sought after you're going to be. Give us 2 years.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but I don't know if they necessarily thought this many jobs would be open.
Right. Yeah,
that's the one thing. I mean, there's a lot open there. All right, let's say Freeman does take another job and he left and became head coach.
Well, since he's possible, I don't mean to say that's not possible.
Yeah, no, that one's obvious if Fickell were to leave. If Freeman were to leave, is Mike Elston finally the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame?
I almost think so, because it's also, you're changing systems again. If not, I think Elston has probably learned Freeman's system enough, just like he learned Lee's. He does have experience. I know people don't think he was a defensive coordinator when Van Gorder was fired in 14, but he was. Greg Hudson was just kind of a guy on the sidelines cheering for everybody. Mike Elston was calling the defenses. Now, he's been passed over because Brian Kelly passed him over, and Brian Kelly knows him more than anyone. Obviously, Mike Elston is one of the best defensive line coaches in the country. Kelly has said in interviews that he is completely ready to become a head coach. I think that's true. He's been associate head coach. He's coached special teams, linebackers, defensive line. He's coordinated. I think he's ready. I think you almost have to consider he gets the job, because you also don't want to turn over your defensive scheme again. We saw how long it took them to kind of get out of that and, make that transition from Lee to Freeman over the first month. Boy, you say this though, Anj, they really need Marcus Freeman to stay one more year.
No question.
For continuity.
But these are all possibilities, and if Freeman left and you don't promote Elston, and Polian leaves, and Elston may finally say, screw this, I'm going to go take a DC job somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if he does that, then you've lost all your recruiters. That would be really weird all of a sudden.
Yes,
right?
it would be huge. There's a lot to consider if the Marcus Freeman's number one domino falls.
That's what it would be. All right, well, now I just scared the crap out of everybody, so that's beside the point.
That's a bad phone call now.
All right, on that note, Tim, thank you very much. Enjoy your stay in the Bay Area.
Yeah, always do. Thanks, Anj.
All right, that is Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated. We could revisit what he said, but then we'd be out of time on the show. So we've got our game day sprint to kickoff coming up next as we preview Notre Dame versus Stanford. Notre Dame FCU's Irish Sports Saturdays is back right after this.
Did you know that 1 in 5 Americans will develop skin cancer by the age of 70? Skin cancer is the most common form of cancer, and it's mainly caused by sunshine. And even though the sun only seems to be working part-time now that cold weather's here, you may still have skin cancer developing in areas of sun exposure. If you notice a spot that looks different than anything else on your skin, or a non-healing sore that lasts more than a month, see a dermatologist. Such areas could be skin cancer. I'm Dr. Tom McGovern, skin cancer and reconstructive surgeon practicing at Fort Wayne Dermatology now for over 20 years. I've treated over 30,000 skin cancers with Mohs surgery, an outpatient procedure that provides a 99% cure rate for new basal cell skin cancers. If you have skin cancer, my compassionate and skilled team at Fort Wayne Dermatology would be privileged to care for you.
Hi, this is Angelo DiCarlo. By now, I'm sure you've heard the commercials about Elevate 150 from Notre Dame Federal Credit Union. My wife and I took part in the free financial checkup and got Redeemer Radio $150, so pretty awesome there. But we also got a lot more. Notre Dame FCU helped us out with a bunch of items that we have been pushing off for a while. Now we're in a much better position financially thanks to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union. Now it's your chance for better financial health. Sign up for a free checkup at NotreDameFCU.com/elevate.
We know you like football. So do we. We're TireRack.com, and this is our version of a 2-minute drill, except it's only 30 seconds. TireRack.com has an enormous selection of tires. Not sure which ones to buy? Use our Tire Decision Guide to find the right tires for your vehicle and the way you drive. Then get them shipped fast and free on all orders over $50. Shipping is in as little as 1 day. Free. TireRack.com ships to independent, recommended installers. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be. Touchdown!
I love the Bay Area. I love going back home. I feel like everyone always has like that something else they can bring, or that some juice they can bring when they play back home, but they always have a different type of energy. Or like senior night, everyone played like out of their mind senior night, but that's their senior night, playing for each other, playing for the seniors. Seniors play for themselves, the other seniors. I always feel like there's always a next step, and maybe going home, that'll like bring out the next step into me.
That's Isaiah Foskey. Can you imagine Isaiah Foskey with extra juice on the field tonight? I mean,
that'd be really entertaining.
So Foskey grew up about an hour from Stanford. Tariq Bracy is like 20 minutes. He's like the kid that grew up in Mishawaka. He's just literally, you do a Google search of his hometown, it's 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, you're really in the backyard. So those are going to be two guys that are ready to go as Notre Dame takes on Stanford tonight. The Irish 10-1, ranked 6th in the college football playoff rankings. Stanford just 3-8. They have lost 6 straight games, including last week they lost to Cal 41-11. They are bad, Kevin.
Yeah, it was a battle of the 3 and 7 teams.
That's the other thing.
It was a hard one to watch.
Like
it was wild.
Yeah, Cal doesn't exactly have Aaron Rodgers on the other side right now. Wow. It is stunning how bad they are. How bad did they look when you watch some clips of them?
It was just bizarre because they, at least offensively, they do all the things that they used to do when they were successful. They have people that look like they should be able to do well. Offensive line is 4 juniors, but, man, it's just not working. I don't know whether it's chemistry, talent, new coaches, combo, whatever's happening, it's kind of falling off.
Yeah, Tanner McGee is the one good player, you could say, the quarterback. He did miss the Utah and Oregon State games before returning for Cal. He's thrown for 2,155 yards, 64% completion percentage, 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 239 yards per game. But we always talk about them being a team that can run the ball.
Run the ball, yeah.
I mean, their leading rusher is 401 yards on the season.
And he's not a bad running back. It's just not – they're not getting it done in the trenches like they used to.
Yeah, and, well, and then you flip it to the other side, and their rush defense ranked 127th out of 130 teams in the country. The 4th worst Division 1A rush defense in the country, giving up 242 yards per game. Stanford.
Well, and stats can be deceiving, but I don't think you can hide from that one. I mean, that's bad. Well, it's really bad.
Stats are deceiving when it's game 4 of the year,
yeah,
and you had one really, really bad game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You played Georgia in week 3, and the stats are deceiving that way. But, man.
Yeah, they've been through a whole schedule.
All right, so give me something. Anything to worry about?
Yeah, I mean, any game, I think the turnovers that
sure
Stanford could win if they win the turnover battle. But otherwise, I mean, I think Notre Dame should be able to run the ball, right? Because we've noted how bad their Stanford's run defense is. And then I think one of the highlights, and maybe it's just coming off of the high of the last couple games, but Notre Dame's defense, their pass rush is really impressive. So obviously Foskey leads the way in tackles for loss and sacks. And there's a lot to add up, so I may have done the math wrong, but I think that if I'm reading it right, there's like 70-plus tackles for loss for Notre Dame, 37 sacks, so 107 negative yardage plays for Notre Dame's defense.
That's
with
really
one
good.
loss.
Oh yeah,
that's
there
a heck of a
great
deal.
Stat that I read earlier this week that's saying that this is the most sacks in a Brian Kelly era.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's the most ever in Notre Dame was in 2003, and it's one more, 38.
Yeah, they're closing in on the team sack record, which they're definitely getting. I mean, if they don't get it,
They should get after him tonight.
But I'm saying if they don't get it tonight,
yeah,
maybe there is a ball game. But I don't think there's going to be a ball game. I mean, all right, Kevin, what's your score prediction?
I think that they'll win big. I think it's going to be 47-13.
Wow. All right. Ilya, what do you got?
I got 45-7. I think they score a garbage TD at the end.
Yeah, 13 may have been kind. I don't know.
All right. You're right. You know what? Honestly, I have a bad feeling about this.
Oh, Anj.
Look, a bad feeling in a different way. I just think they're just not going to – I think it's going to be almost like the Virginia game where they get up early and then they – and just ends.
Score over 50?
I don't know.
Everybody plays. Fun on the West Coast.
I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be like 30. I'm gonna go 31-6. I don't think they're gonna win, no problem. I just don't think it's gonna be as high scoring, just because I think they're gonna. I don't know why they would let off the gas. If there's ever a time not to let off the gas, it would be tonight. But for some reason, I have some weird feeling that. Let's put it this way, real quick. The one stat I'll throw out: Brian Kelly's 1-4 at Stanford. Only win was in 2019, so he could win 2 in a row. So that's the good news. All right, they're gonna kill him. All right, maybe it's gonna be 51-6. Never mind. All right, that'll do it for Notre Dame Federal Credit Union's Irish Sports Saturdays. Notre Dame FC, where you bank does matter. For Kevin Downey, Ilya Glasman, a reminder: We will not have a show next week. We will be back with you for a bowl special coming up. We'll announce that in commercials and on social media. We close our show the same way the Irish traditionally close their show, in pregame.
Hi, this is Father Nate Wills. I'm a Holy Cross priest, a faculty member at Notre Dame's Alliance for Catholic Education, and one of the chaplains to the Notre Dame football team. This is a prayer that the players pray together at the end of our pregame Mass. Let us pray. Grant, we beseech you, O Lord our God, that we may enjoy continual health of mind and body, and by the glorious intercession of Mary our Lady, may we accept the joys and trials of this life and someday enter into eternal happiness. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Go Irish!
This has been a presentation of Redeemer Radio Sports.
You can improve your financial health and help out Redeemer Radio thanks to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union. Schedule and complete a 30-minute financial checkup with Notre Dame FCU, and they will send $150 in your name to Redeemer Radio. For more information, visit NotreDameFCU.com/elevate. You already share our values. Why not share in our benefits? Notre Dame Federal Credit Union.
Protecting your Catholic family should always be top of mind for any parent. It certainly is for me. I'm Andrew Weiss, Knights of Columbus field agent and father of 3 little ones. I want your family to be taken care of too. From life insurance to retirement planning, I will make sure your family is protected in the present and insured for the future, while guaranteeing the security of our Catholic, moral, and ethical investment strategies. Visit Andrew Weiss, KOFC.com, and discover the Catholic difference.
Catholic schools in the Diocese of Fort Wayne South Bend are committed to teaching the truth and beauty of our Catholic faith. Now, with the expansion of the School Choice Scholarship Program, more families qualify to receive